this is David Stark from WatcherPass.com, and today I'm here to talk to you about Gunpowder Milkshake, which is releasing on Netflix on July 14th, 2021. It's like a female John Wick, I guess. It's an exciting, stylish film that's got a lot going for it. So I'm here to talk to you about the film. I'm going to give you three things I liked, three things I didn't like, and then discuss the ending just a little bit. As you can expect, there will be spoilers in this overview review. So if you don't want any spoilers, please go read the review on watcherpass.com. That's where I put all my written reviews. They're much more vague. They don't have any spoilers, so you can kind of get a sense of, whether or not you should watch the film based on what I liked. And after you've watched the film, just come back here, watch the review, or if you don't care about spoilers, keep going. So in Gunpowder Milkshake, Sam, who's played by Karen Gillan, is an assassin. And she has kind of a storied past. When she was 12, or I think 12 or 15, I think maybe it was 12. Her mother, who's also an assassin, played by Lena Headey, took the wrong job and killed someone that apparently she shouldn't have. And so she has to go into hiding. And Sam is raised by the firm, who is this kind of syndicate, this group of old men that kind of, I guess, in this movie, they kind of run the world, or at least run a large, have a lot of influence in the world. And they kind of take Sam in and raise her after her mother goes into hiding. Now, the firm also employed her mother. So there's this kind of like push and pull where they, I guess, got her mother to have to go into hiding, but then they raise Sam, and Sam kind of follows in her mother's footsteps and becomes this badass assassin. But the firm sends her on this job that requires her to get some money back from someone who stole from the firm. And in doing so, finds out that this person's daughter, who's played by Coleman, has been kidnapped. So Sam has to make a choice. Is she going to get the money and just kind of complete the job and keep going on with her life, or is she going to use the money to try to save Coleman? And as you can expect, I mean, it wouldn't be a very interesting film if she just took the money, gave it back, went on with her life. She goes and tries to save Coleman, and she does, but then in the process kind of gets on the firm's bad side and now has to fight her way out. If this kind of sounds familiar, it's, this film is heavily influenced by John Wick, or at least, I don't know if it's heavily influenced, but it has a lot of similarities to John Wick, except instead of Keanu Reeves as this kind of awesome assassin who's trying to get out of the game, you've got Karen Gillan, who is this awesome assassin who's trying to get out of the game. Now, there are some differences, and I'll go into that during the review, but, for all intents and purposes, you can think of this as a kind of female John Wick type film. So Sam is now trying to fight her way out of the firm, and she's also fighting against someone who she crossed in a previous encounter with the firm. So she kind of has to fight on two fronts. She's running out of friends, and so the whole film is about her trying to survive and keep this young girl alive, and also rely on some of her old contacts in the underworld, again, like John Wick, to make it. So three things I liked about this film. First, the cast. I mean, the cast of this film is awesome. You've got Karen Gillan, you've got Lena Headey, you've got Angela Bassett, Michelle Yeoh, Carla Gugino, Chloe Coleman, and Paul Giamatti. So it's kind of this great all-star cast. And they play really fun roles. Karen Gillan as an assassin is a fun one to see. She has to go a little bit more, I think, hardcore than some of her previous roles. Lena Headey is great as her mother, and the two of them have this really fun kind of bickering, mother-daughter fighting that goes on, especially at the start when they first meet up after a long separation. The three, they're called librarians. They're kind of they are librarians, but they also supply some guns. The three librarians, played by Angela Bassett, Michelle Yeoh, and Carla Gugino, are really, really fun. Like they kind of have the prim, proper librarian look, but then they also are themselves badass fighters. So that they were also fun to see, and each of them has a very different fighting style, which was also a lot of fun. And then Chloe Coleman she was great in My Spy, and she is fantastic here. She has to be a little bit more, I think, emotional in this film, because she has to show a little bit of fear, because she's supposed to be this kind of innocent 8-year-old, but then she gets a little bit of sass too, and she also kind of gets more confident around this world as it goes on. I mean, she doesn't go like extreme and murder people, but she becomes a little bit more comfortable in this world. And then Paul Giamatti is, he plays kind of Sam's contact at the firm. And he is, Paul Giamatti, he's great as this kind of like love him or hate him, good slash bad guy. He kind of skirts both lines in this film, more on the bad side of things. But it's Paul Giamatti. You can't, everything he does is going to be good, and you have to kind of love him. So the cast is a major draw for this film, and something that you're going to appreciate. The next thing I loved is the style. Now, I'm not sure if this film is based on a manga or an anime. I did a quick search and I couldn't find anything, but that's probably because the search results are all weighted towards a Netflix show. But it feels like there is some sort of Japanese influence, especially at the start. There's a few kind of, I think, Japanese advertisements. Sam is watching, I think, an anime show. And then there's a cell phone. I think it's Chloe's cell phone that has this like giant, not giant, but a large white bear. So it has a lot of like Japanese influences. I feel like it could be based on a manga, and the style of the film feels like it could be some sort of anime or manga style. But then also the film has this kind of this nice set of influences that kind of merge into this really interesting visual style. You've got like some noir flair, especially at the start when Sam is in this like trench coat with a hat, and there's a lot of like dark fight scenes and a lot of intense drama at the start. And it also has a lot of neon as some of the locations that they go to. There's a nightlife to it, and so you get a lot of like really nice, colored lighting. They go to a bowling alley that has a really fantastic style to it, and then you also get this kind of spaghetti western type influence as well. There's a fight early on that they're kind of standing off, and you get this kind of like spaghetti western music in the background, and then when the fight starts, you still have that music, but it's kind of amplified into like a higher energy song based on this kind of like spaghetti western theme. And so it's a really kind of, it really makes that fight fun, and it kind of fits with this whole style of this film, and it kind of merges all of these into this interesting, enjoyable world that again, it feels like John Wick, but it feels maybe a little bit more lighthearted. And that goes into the third thing I liked, which is this does feel like a lighthearted John Wick. Now, there are a lot of things that are similar with John Wick, and so there's going to be comparisons. So the film has a lot that's similar. You've got a super assassin, someone who kind of has, I guess, a heart of gold and is trying to get out. You've got this kind of underworld that kind of exists in our world, and all these code words that they use, like the librarians. They're kind of arms dealers, and a lot of their weapons are hidden in books, and there's a lot of like coded messages at the start. Like, I forget what they said, but I'm here to check out some books, and they're like, oh, well, reading is important. I'm like, well, mine are old, and she puts up her old guns, and like, oh, well, we'll get you some new some new reading material, things like that. There's a lot of coded messages that kind of hint at this underworld that exists but is kind of living just under the surface of the normal world. And then you also have these just kind of over the top fight scenes, which are kind of a hallmark of John Wick. But I think in this film they're a little bit more lighthearted. That's not to say that John Wick doesn't have levity, but in this film some of the fights are, I think, almost intentionally ridiculous, and it makes it, it gives it kind of its own different flair, which was nice to see. Like, there's one fight scene where Sam, Karen Gillan's character, her arms aren't working. They're kind of paralyzed because she's been drugged, and so she's fighting with this like knife taped to one hand and the gun taped to the other, and she's kind of like swinging her arms around to try to fight, and it just looks so ridiculous, but it also is fun. Like, it makes it kind of an interesting fight, and it puts a challenge in for this kind of super assassin. And so you get a lot of these kind of like moments of this more kind of lighthearted, joking style in this serious John Wick type film. And the fights, I think, like John Wick, they are brutal, but there's a lot more improvised weapons. I mean, John Wick uses a lot of like knives and things around him, but this, you get a lot more kind of ridiculous is the wrong word, but just a lot more variety in the weapons that are used. And they'll like pick up like a book and throw it, or in one they like pick up a gold bar and fight with that. So you get a lot of kind of like silly fights, but also brutal and interesting ones. Now, three things I didn't love about this film, and to be clear, I did really enjoy this film. I thought it was kind of a fun world, and decent action, good action, and kind of a fun little female take on the John Wick kind of style. But the things I didn't love, some of the fighting wasn't great, and this is not a major issue. Like for the most part, the fighting was really fun and interesting. But there were just some scenes, especially early on when it was just Karen Gillan fighting, where it felt like some of her fighting style looked not as polished as some of the fights in John Wick, and some of the later fights where I think her stance was a little off, or she didn't kind of extend her leg when she kicked. And it's minor. It's just something I noticed at the start when I was really kind of getting into the film, and they kind of detracted at the start. But by the end, I was enjoying all the fights, especially at the end. There's this fight scene with everyone and the three librarians, and each person is using a different type of weapon, and they kind of cut between them, and it's a really wonderful, exciting kind of culmination of everything that you've seen. So again, a very minor thing. The second thing I didn't love, and this, God, I keep saying it, but sorry, is again similar to kind of John Wick. You don't have a lot of explanation of this world. You have this world that's built up and set up, but I feel like everyone kind of knows the keywords, and there isn't a ton to explain what's going on, like what the firm does and why these librarians are here, and why they chose librarians as their cover, and why they don't have any other customers and things like that. Everything is very convenient and very stylish and very fun, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of explanation for this world to really kind of understand what's going on. And maybe it's saved for other things. Maybe they just didn't want to get into it because it bogged the film down. I mean, the film was already an hour and 50 minutes, so it's kind of on the longer end for most films. So if they added some more stuff, maybe that would have just pushed it a little longer, and it would have just dragged. You know, I'm not sure, but it's just something that I wish that there was a little bit more, because I did enjoy the time in this world. I wanted to find out more about it. And the last thing that I didn't love, although I did like the film, the ending felt like there was a little bit too much convenience and a lack of consequences. In the ending, and this is where I'll also go into some discussion about the ending. In the end, let's see, Sam is protecting the girl who's played by Chloe Coleman. Sam and her mother and the librarians are all protecting her against this rival crime syndicate that Sam ended up killing the leader of that syndicate's son in a mission that she was sent out by the firm to do. So essentially the firm sent her to do a mission. Things go wrong. In order to survive, she has to kill everyone there, and one of those people happens to be the son of this rival crime syndicate. That that the leader of that syndicate basically sends everyone to go kill Sam, and the firm kind of throws her under the bus. They say, oh, she went rogue, we never sent her to do that, and so here's her location. So now she has to basically fight an entire army of people, and it's just her mother, and the three librarians. And so they're all fighting. This is probably this is the best action scene in the film, because each of the characters is kind of fighting in a very different style. One of the librarians is using like a chain that she's wrapping around people and choking them out and throwing them. One is using two hammers, and one, the Carla Gugino, is using a giant machine gun. So it's just a lot of like very fun, interesting fights. And eventually they kill everyone except for the I guess the main bad guy lackey. I guess he's kind of like the head of the crime syndicate's fighting forces. He ends up taking the girl, killing Carla Gugino, and then taking the girl with him. So now the librarians have and Sam and her mother have to figure out how to get the girl back. So Sam essentially offers herself up as a sacrifice to get her back. They go to this diner that appears to be neutral ground, because whenever anyone tries to get on there, the diner makes them surrender their guns. So Sam goes there, meets with him, basically offers herself in exchange for the girl. But then lo and behold, Sam's mother and the remaining two librarians dress up as waitresses and kind of appear at the last minute with their guns to save everyone. And there's this really kind of the stylish, but actually I didn't love the fact that it was slow-mo, kind of gunfight scene to close this out. And then, so basically you've got them entering this neutral ground, killing people, and then no one is coming after them. I mean, I think that's what I liked about John Wick, where they make these decisions that are kind of either hot-headed or kind of morally right, but then they have consequences because they're breaking the rules of this, ancient organization, these ancient kind of accords that have been put in place. And in this case, they break the rules, and it doesn't seem like there's any real consequences to them. They just kind of leave, and then they get the girl back, but now they're on the firm's shit list. They're on the firm's radar because they have, they've broken with the firm. They kind of killed the syndicate, and now they're going to be hunted by the firm because I guess they crossed them, and also they lost some money that they were supposed to recover, but stuff happens. And then so they set up this raid, I guess, or they set up this kind of encounter with Paul Giamatti where they essentially say, like, if you come after us, we will kill you. And it is clever, but that's kind of it. Then they ride off into the sunset. And it just feels like this is a very convenient ending that should have more consequences. A, because they kind of broke all these rules. And B, I wanted this set up of a sequel. And that's not to say that there's not going to be a sequel, but the way that the film ended, there's no definite signal that there will be a sequel. Now, I'm sure if the film does well, there will be a sequel, but as it stands, the story kind of ends, and all is done. And so I kind of wished that the ending had a little bit more weight and a little more consequences, so I could know that there was a sequel coming, rather than just sit around and wait for a sequel to be made, if one does. I mean, the film itself is fine as is, but it just felt like, I think maybe the problem is that you have this kind of really rich trilogy in John Wick that has these movies that set up the next one and have the story that flows through them. And in this film, you've got a really rich, or seemingly rich, backstory, this setup that could be perfect for a sequel, and then they just kind of ride off into the sunset and it's done. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you think that I missed some things, because I definitely could have. It's late, and the film has a lot going on. So if I missed some things, let me know. If there was something about the ending that you liked or didn't like, please comment and let me know. And thanks so much for watching. If you liked this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot, and make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.